what Cardale Jones did on the sideline? He's walking up.
Move over a tiny bit that way.
No.
Yes.
Everybody was going to shake his hand. Every time someone shook his hand, he spun right around him. It was hilarious. It was hilarious.
All right, we ready? It's technically recording.
No. Oh.
All right, well, hello and welcome to the Nuts and Bolts podcast. I'm your host, Noah Sharfman, joined, as always, by Vice President, Head Coach of the Ohio Machine, Bear Davis. But today, joined by an even bigger celebrity, the HOF himself, the Godfather.
The Godfather, that's enough.
Do we have more nicknames for you?
Oh, the longer he sticks around, the more we will come up with.
Well, we're going to need a podcast nickname for him, for sure.
Oh, that's coming.
Joined.
Do we make that up for
By-
him, or since he's a HOF, we let him make up his own?
Oh, that's a good question. That is a very good question.
Be approved by the boss, huh?
The original coach, not head coach, but on the original coaching staff of the Ohio Machine, 4 years into this, Coach Bill Wolford. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
We don't even have like any good music for that. I was thinking like with coaches. I mean, he does have also his mustache is going to get into the Hall of Fame separately at some point.
Do you think there's a mustache Hall of Fame?
But probably.
I'm sure there is.
And I was thinking like some Magnum PI, something with Tom Selleck, some kind of intro music like that.
Some Metallica, like Enter Sandman, from Virginia Tech.
There you go.
Sweet.
Well, as an OSU grad, I'm sure you can say Virginia Tech right
That's
now
right.
after the win.
Absolutely.
Talking about Cardale Jones, wouldn't you like to see him on a lacrosse field?
Oh, my God.
250-pound midi like that. That's a big boy.
Yeah. Shooting a rock? Yeah, that'd be fun.
It would be. We have a couple guys that can shoot, though, yeah?
One or two. I don't know if I like sitting in the middle. We're gonna have to work this out next time because I feel like I'm in a tennis match. You know, I'm going back and forth.
I mean, we
Let's
just gotta have
go
people
back.
stop, visiting us in the office.
Well, then we just put them on.
That's really what happened. I mean, there was no plan for this. It just kind of happened.
Just walk in and you're in the podcast.
You're in.
There we go.
So
Well,
you properly introduce us 5 minutes into our babble.
that's kind of not true because today, as we're recording this show, there was some big news for the Machine this year. We announced our 23-man protected roster, a move that pretty much happens a month after the MLL championship game every year. This is now your third time doing it, right, Bear? Putting together the protected list.
Yes, it is.
Why don't you walk us through what yourself, Coach Wolford, Coach Mariano, Coach Marzano, what the entire staff goes through to kind of get that going? When the season ends, we have about a month to kind of build that outlook. What's your guys' process?
I think this year was a little bit different with the announcement of the Atlanta Blaze because we do know that we're going to have to announce a 12-man protected list. So we had to, we have to analyze our roster, and then we have to get down to 23. Then we have to get it down to 12 eventually. So there's some strategy that goes into it, but certainly balance. You look at guys, how the season went for them, what their plans are for next year. We had a retirement, so that opens up a spot. That kind of it's always it's good to see a guy that had a good career be able to go out on his own decision, and certainly when a guy makes that decision, it opens up a spot. So really kind of helps you with your 23 when those things happen like that. But we have to get a feel for where guys are moving, what their jobs are going to look like. That's a little different than probably other sports when they're doing their protected list, but certainly a part of our equation. And then we all talk and we send in the kind of a rank our guys where we feel like they fit in the organization, the future of the organization, and then everyone has a say, and that's how we make our list.
Not saying this wasn't the case the first time you did this after the 2013 season, after the 2014 season either, but with so many guys that contributed this year to the roster that were battling for playing time, how difficult was that process this year?
I think we had a couple guys that developed, that we were able to get on our roster. We were able to see their development, but it's always like no one else really got to see their development. So I don't know if we feel like there's going to be guys that we let go that will be available in the supplemental draft that we can go back after and pick those guys up and continue to watch their growth through training camp. That's what you hope. You hope for 3 or 4 of those guys to fall through and you can pick them back up.
So let's kind of attack the protected roster here. We'll go position by position. Naturally, the list I'm looking at is not broken out by position. So where do you want to start? Attack, goalie?
Wherever you're the host.
All right, let's start with the one I don't need to count on.
You're the boss of this show.
We're going to start in net. Huge surprise to everyone out there. Brian Phipps and Scott Rogers were protected. Can you walk us through that decision?
I think he's talking to you, Coach.
I'm not. Obviously you want to protect the guys that that we lean on heavily, and obviously Phipps, played very well, and what Scotty Rogers gives us when he's not playing, just from a leadership role. Those are 2 guys that we want to hang on to.
Yeah, that was kind of a softball question for you there.
Well, that's why I passed it to Coach. I didn't want to, Hall of Famer gets, all these. He gets the easy
2015
ones.
team MVP and Brian Phipps, 2015 unsung hero and Scotty Rogers. They accounted for, I believe it's 40% of our team awards.
There you go.
Probably a good place to keep them.
Those guys mean so much to our team and both on and off the field, like Coach touched on. And, those were some easier decisions, that we made.
The end of the season, we had 1 face-off guy on the roster. He ended up being our breakout player. I'm actually going to go to Coach Wolford on this because I want to hear about the relationship you and Greg Piskolchin forged throughout the season.
That it worked out well. Greg he's a different bird, and he works like a dog. I don't see too many people that work as hard at his trade than he does. And for what he did, go back to our game at home with Long Island and how he faced off and how he dominated. I'm not sure how you wouldn't want to, keep that guy around. We worked well together. We did all kinds of different things, kind of made up drills and, whatever we could do to kind of enhance his skills and more or less keep him happy because, those face-off guys are kind of like goalies. They're a different breed. So, tell you what, I'm glad that he's under our thumb because, we're certainly going to rely on him a ton next year.
I think it was cool to see, and Coach Davis, I'm sure you can agree with me. Be on the road, we'd be at walkthrough in the morning before the game, and I think every week there was a new drill that Coach Wolford and Greg were doing.
Yeah, his routine is pretty regimented, but he does throw in some new stuff, and I have to agree with Coach. He works extremely hard at his trade, and I just don't know if you get as good as he has in a short period of time in this league without working, like that. So just talked to him actually last week, and great conversation talking about, his routine and what he's been doing. Actually, our conversation was probably longer than our whole conversations all season long combined. I was just waiting for him to get off the phone. It's like, all right, Coach, bye. But he kept
so you guys talked for 4 minutes?
We talked for 4 or 5 minutes, and it was nice. I got to catch up with Greg, so it was good.
Fantastic. We're going to move on from the specialists to the defense. Kept a bunch of defensemen, a lot of young defensemen, and a lot of guys that have experience in our system. Jake Bailey, Brian Karalunas, Matt McMahon, Mike Noon, Jackson Place, Stephen Waldeck, and Dana Wilbur. Can you talk about that group?
Well, that group, they all had some great playing time this year. McMahon, not as much as maybe some of the other guys, and Bailey, was picked up in a couple games there for us. But they all showed tremendous potential. We're excited about all those guys. With the Brian Farrell retiring, that opens up a spot. So keeping a hold of some of those guys so we can continue to work with them, I think, will was key. And with the expansion draft, you anticipate that you might lose a couple of those guys, some of those younger guys. So you hope you can retain a couple of them so you can keep developing them. Because I think defensemen are in this league are like fine wine, and coach can tell you it's hard to be good your first year. Like you only get better, over time because you learn the attack, man. You just get smarter, and for us, I think that's going to be a key factor for some of those guys. But with Dana Wilbur and Jackson, I honestly argue that Jackson's probably one of the best defensemen, if not the best, base defenseman in the league. He's had a tremendous year. I feel like he's going to be great. BK, the leader that he is, arguably one of the best pulls in the league right now. And as far as at least takeaways and ground balls, I mean, he's all over the place. So real excited about, him and just on down the line.
Let's talk about Jackson for a second. When you look at his 2014 year, he came out of Bucknell after his college season was done, and then ended up practicing with us once, appeared in one game, practiced once more. So he had about 2-3 practices when you throw in walkthroughs, one game, comes into training camp. Not sure he ever came off the field this year, with the exception of penalties. How does a player take the step that Jackson took? So if you're a Matt McMahon, you played in one game, or you're a Jake Bailey, you played in 2 or 3 games. How do those guys take that step to be, maybe not the type of defenseman that's going to get mentioned with the bigger names? The, why am I blanking? Joe Fletchers, the Scott Ratliffs, the guys that are going to get the recognition on the All-MLL team. But somebody like Jackson, who if you talk to the Lax Dirt guys that do the advanced stats, will mention him in the top 3-4 defensemen.
It's hard to say, because everyone's training regiment's so different. I think defensemen I think that's probably one of the hardest things to train for because it's so reactionary of a thing to do, where offense, you're dictating what you do. So it's really hard. The guys that can find ways to get out and train and elevate their game in off season are rare to find, and Jackson was able to do that. And with him, the game he played in 2014, he'll tell you, was not great. It was not a great showing. It was average at best, and I think that motivated him tremendously. I will
tell you, the one thing that we did notice and we talked about was the fact that his feet are so good.
Oh yeah,
his quickness, his ability to recover. We saw that right away. This kid's got some potential, and I think just continuing working on the little things of the game, particularly the footwork, which, in this league is everything. I think that's probably the biggest thing that, at least that I see, that kind of differentiates Jackson from a number of defensemen.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what he did show in that game when he played in 14, was that he has all the athletic ability. And it's just hard to come into a game, especially like mid-season, and I think we had, playing against New York, who's not easy. So, there was a lot of things that, you look at it and say, okay, given the circumstance, we want to give him another shot, bring him back into camp.
That's a perfect Matt McMahon kind of example. Matt McMahon played on June 20th. I think we had 3 Poles making their debut for us. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. And I think he's going to be great, in the league. Several guys who got a couple games they could be very well make that jump like Jackson did, without a doubt in my mind. Some good players there. So we're going to move on to arguably the loudest group of guys on the sidelines. They typically are not categorized as a group. They get lumped in with someone else, but I think that they deserve their own section right here now. Talking about our defensive midfielders. Anytime you put Dominique Alexander, Jake Bernhardt, and Dan Groot first, second, and third in the substitution box, you're going to hear it from them, aren't you?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Bash Brothers, isn't it? Almost like to some degree. If they're not talking smack to someone on the field, they're talking smack to each other. They're talking smack to Coach Dom.
I think Coach Dom takes most of it. From standing on the sidelines a couple times, I think that there's nobody in this league that wants to see the field more than those 3.
Yeah, those guys are fun. They bring so much energy, and I think that their competitive drive and not just against, like I said, even with each other, like within our team on practice on Friday night, no one comes out ready for a challenge, more than those guys, and they're kind of a loud but quiet group. At the end of the game, you heard them behind you the whole time, and you look at a game when we have a great game all the way through, you can look back and you guarantee that those D middies had great ground balls. They stopped, made some great stops. They cleared the ball, pushed it in transition. You can just go through and you start watching the film and you're like, wow, those guys were the difference in the game.
Their personalities match the position when you consider what the D middies do. They're always on the run, very aggressive, and super competitive. It's like these are the perfect guys for us.
I think it's a compliment when I say that the first two guys to tell me that dinner was bad on the road are Neek and Groot. Neek will occasionally tell me when barbecue's good at home and then remind me it was his suggestion, which is also that's Dominique.
Would Neek take credit for something? I seriously?
Yeah, we've been working on it. His level of humbleness has kind of wanes whether his shot's on or not.
Right? Yeah, there you go. That's a good point.
So we'll move into, I think, the sections that our fans are probably real familiar with. Let's talk about the midfielders. Peter Baum, Kevin Cooper, Kyle Harrison, and Tom Schreiber. Is that his name?
Schreiber.
How's that group of offensive middies?
Yeah, they're okay. They do all right. They can hold the fort down. That group was, again, it goes back to some of the easier ones. We felt like they've been a core midfield group for us for the last couple of years, and they complement each other very well. What they do, and we have some diversity there. Pete towards the end of the year was playing a little attack for us, and that's an area that we could see him stepping into that role a little bit more, and each guy finding new levels in their game, and it's been fun watching Tommy's game blow up this year and balance between his assists and goals, and Kyle still works on his game like he's a ninth grader at Friends. Like he still has that same energy and drive to get better, which is exciting, especially when he's got all these young middies around him who, if they see it in him, it bleeds over to them too.
I think what you're talking about with Kyle's twofold, because you'll see Schreiber and Baum gravitate towards him, and they'll carry their stick to practice and leave their bag in the hotel room because that's what Kyle does. And the post-practice ice baths with Schreiber in one and Harry in the other, like they're really taking the lead from that captain, and you could see it on the field with how balanced Schreiber's season was too. It's really kind of indicative. You look at Harrison's last year at Hopkins when he won the Tewaaraton, he was just balanced across the board, taking face-offs, goals, assists. So
yeah, no, it's definitely a good combination for us. So we kept that unit tight here for the 23.
I wouldn't want to have to play against them because I think the matchup is a nightmare. And I would have to say what Kyle has done on the field and particularly off the field, his leadership role, just with the number of things that he has done, in particular with my nephew, with the situation we had when he invited him in the locker room and gave him everything he gave him. It just kind of opened up, and what a great guy. I'm glad we have him.
Next year, I'm not letting Kyle vote for captains because Kyle's the only reason Kyle has not been a unanimous vote.
Not surprising.
Right. Yeah.
And when we asked for their top three, he's won on everyone else and not listed on his. So Kyle Harrison, you're not allowed to vote for captains next year.
There you go.
Want to announce it unanimously. We're going to get that done for you. I'd say the group on the field that has the most fun is up next. We're going to talk attackmen. First line attack from the end of the season is back with Marcus Holman, Steele Stanwyck, and Jimmy Bitter. We also brought back Jimmy Daly, who kind of filled in that first attack role at the beginning of the season, and then missed the season due to a work commitment. Logan Schuss, who was kind of our cornerstone lefty attackman for 2 years, is back on the 23 as well. Why don't you talk about that group?
Well, those 5 guys are all, I mean, high quality, attackmen, and they all have a little different game too that they bring, and certainly, we kept I felt a pretty good balance of those guys. I mean, Jimmy was very productive in the games that he played in, and ran through the midfield a little bit for us. It was unfortunate that Logan, with his work commitment, could not play with us this year, but we were able to find some other guys that could hold down the left spot, and being Jimmy Bitter, who jumped in and had a great year with us, and we're excited about his future, with the machine. And, of course, Steele, Steele and his vision and what he brings to the table, and leadership is second to none. And Marcus again had another high energy, just holding down, the crease area. He comes out of the crease area. He does a lot for us. He picks up balls on inlines, does so much, and his energy is second to none. And so it's a fun group. Certainly glad that we were able to find a way to keep all those guys. I mean, we had some other guys that had contributed. Unfortunately, we could not protect because he had 23. So that was the 5 that we decided to protect.
Yeah, I think that the attack group, I don't think anybody, I know Greg works awful hard facing off, but when you think about what Marcus does writing and just kind of the off-ball things, I don't think there's anybody in the league that works like he does, and man, does he have fun. And Steele is just, obviously the knowledge of the game and what he can do. Whoever's on the field with him, I mean, their level is raised. So, I mean, these guys are just, they just make everybody better that they play with. And they're just, it's a fun group to be around.
So, I'm going to take us back to a play that happened at the end of the season. And I want to ask you guys how much fun you think the attackmen had with that play. Tied at 16.
I know it's just, yeah.
Against Boston in the last minute.
Bing, bing.
Marcus gets the ball, 30 yards out from goal. Decides, heck, I'm just going to bomb a laser across the field to Jimmy Bitter, who had it in his stick for, a second before he decides, I'm just going to give it right to Steele on the doorstep. And I think the ball moved probably close to 100 miles an hour each time. And then Steele just kind of sticks out a stick and pops it in for the game winner. How much fun could you tell that group had just executing that play?
I know I replayed it probably about 50 times myself. I could it's just like, what just happened there, and I mean, it's just a lot of faith, a lot of talent, a lot of skill sets, a lot of things got to come together for a play like that to happen. And I mean, and I think that's what separates that group at times. They obviously they've tried those kind of things before and it hasn't worked out. But I think with that group, you got to live and die by the sword a little bit, because in games like that where they have that kind of faith in each other, they're going to make those plays. There
was no thought. It just happened. They trusted each other, and they just did it. And I know at the time I said it's probably one of the prettiest goals that I'd ever seen. So it just.
Oh, it ranks up there for sure for me. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Their personality, the way they played, that's them.
Yeah.
All right, and finally, we get to the most important player that was on the list. You actually didn't put him on the list, but congrats. You kept me as the operations manager.
Well, Atlanta was offering, I think, like a brand new set of balls, like a dozen or so, maybe.
Had a pair of shoes. I'm not sure.
Some shoes, but I said, you guys, you don't even have that stuff in yet. You can't make offers, stuff you don't even have in yet, And so we elected to decline the offer, and here you are.
Well, I guess it's good to know that Atlanta wanted me out there. So
yeah, well,
it happens.
That's not true.
No,
that never happened, really. No one made any offers.
We know. They offered Jesse. They're looking for a face-off guy.
Yeah, well, we can't. He's selling tickets for us. Can't have him.
So before we go, Bear, why don't you talk a little bit about the upcoming coaches convention we have?
Well, we are real fortunate to be able to put together a coaches convention that we feel is second to none in this region, and certainly some great opportunities out there. But this one's a real good one. Where last year we had over 175 coaches attend the event from 5 different states, and we had 12 speakers. This year we expanded it. We have over 30 speakers. We're covering the women's game. We're covering referee clinics. We also have advanced men and then also youth boys and positional stuff from face-off to goalie play. Pretty exciting, and we have the community working on this as well, all the way from some great sponsors to local colleges who are contributing their talents to be lecture speakers for the event, and so it's definitely one not to miss, and not everybody can always afford to go out east and bring their whole staff out east to attend those clinics, which are great. It just gets really expensive, and that's why we want to do something of that magnitude, or at least along those lines here, in the Midwest.
Sounds awesome, partially because I know everything that's going on. More information is, of course, always available at theohiomachine.com/coaches convention. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more before we get closer to that December 5th date.
Did I tell you we have a Hall of Famer that's going to be giving a lecture?
No, we do have a Hall of Famer.
I mean, I'm just saying.
So, after building the building where the Hall of Fame sits, and basically inventing the sport of lacrosse in Ohio.
Which is the garage. His garage, basically.
Coach Wolford was elected to the Ohio Lacrosse Hall of Fame, joining brother Teddy. And
there's 20 state championships between those two, right? Isn't that right, Coach?
Teddy's got 19. I got 1. I know.
Combined, these guys killing it.
Well, I know that I'm new to the area still, or moved here a couple years ago, and when I started learning about lacrosse in Ohio, it's the Wolfords. It could be because the Wolfords were telling me about it. All those long plane rides to Denver.
You know what? Let me just
defend yourself.
There were obviously people that taught us, and I think when you think about the godfather of lacrosse in Ohio, you got to think about John Gallipo, who got that program going at Worthington, and CG, Chris Gallagher, who followed in his footsteps and has done so many things. So I don't deserve credit for that. Those guys, they're the ones that really kind of got it going, and we were just lucky enough to be at the right place, the right time to kind of continue the great tradition that we were lucky enough to be involved with. So.
No, that's how I felt when I got this job. I was like, I'm really going to be working with a guy whose first name is Bear.
Yeah, right. No, I've been pretty fortunate to be able to be a part of the growth of lacrosse in Ohio growing up, and obviously I actually was a player when Coach was at Upper Arlington as a head coach, and then took over the Kilbourne program. So I a lot of respect for him and Teddy, who then took over at UA, and CG, who was at Thomas at the time, and some of the guys he had mentioned. And we got a lot of great guys up north in Cleveland and Cincinnati that have been, anchors in those areas and growing the game. And it's just it's pretty cool. And we've been getting a lot of those guys. I think we're with the convention and the Ohio Machine, been able to stir that pot and get those guys back involved. Well, not that they haven't been involved, but over time it gets hard. It grows. There's new people that come up, but it's been good to be reacquainted with some of those old faces. Old faces. Well, I mean,
not Coach Wolford.
Not Coach Wolford. I mean,
not at all. Well, Coach Wolford, congrats.
Old man, young face.
We still owe you that raise now that you're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And
I'm not gonna hold my breath.
We'll get a round of golf in to celebrate.
That I can deal with.
I think I got keys to 2000 Toyota Corolla I can let you borrow if you need some Jolly Rancher.
All right. Now that you see what goes on here in the off season, Coach Wolford, thanks for joining us. Bear, you kind of had to, but thank you anyways.
Still don't have a name for him. I mean, he's got all these nicknames, but we have to,
That's fine.
The HOF.
Yeah. All right.
He's the Hoff.
Fair enough. All right.
We just, when he's not here, need a picture of David Hasselhoff. Unrelated, but
I still think Magnum PI music would be perfect for his entry.
all right. Now that we've clearly ended on such a high note, thank you guys for tuning in. We will get together and do this again sometime soon. For now, for Coach Wolford, Bear Davis, I'm Noah Sharfman. Thanks for watching.